Hello and welcome to the Comic Cave. I'm Ramsey, aka Captain Away, and today we're looking at the 1973 crossover event story, The Avengers Defenders War, from Marvel Comics. That word war is gonna be coming up a lot this summer. In September of 1963, the Norse god Loki, in an effort to seek revenge on his brother Thor, inadvertently set off a plan that ended with the formation of the Avengers. That story you probably more or less know. Except for maybe this part where the Hulk dresses as a clown. You might not have known about that part, but now you do. What you might be less familiar with is the second half of the title of today's subject, The Defenders. That got its initial start when the mystical magician Doctor Strange's first solo series came to an end. Strange's final adventure would take him through the pages of Namor the Submariner, and then the Incredible Hulk, setting the precedent for the three of them working together, despite all of them tending to be more solo characters. Namor would continue the tradition later, teaming up with both Hulk and Silver Surfer in a story that would actually be the first time the Defenders, though they weren't yet actually that group, faced off against the Avengers. What's that about a joystick, Goliath? No sir. Please choose your words better. The group would be more formalized when Doctor Strange would return to active duty, so to speak. And once again, he would summon Namor and Hulk to battle an Earth-destroying threat with them. Silver Surfer would more or less join the team a little bit later, but things really got underway when the team was thrown into a castle in the medieval past. There they were trapped by the Mystic Woman controlling the castle and met fellow prisoners Enchantress and Dane Whitman, aka the Black Knight. Enchantress would create a new version of Valkyrie, a woman she had once created in an effort to defeat the Avengers, by overriding the psyche of a woman that had gone mad as she was somewhat unwittingly pulled along in the Defenders' adventures. This Valkyrie would join in their battle for freedom and be left behind by the Enchantress, though before the Norse goddess left, she would also turn the Black Knight into a stone statue. Returning to the present day, Doctor Strange would place a mystical force field around Black Knight's castle, and then bring him home to Strange's Sanctum Sanctorum as he attempted to find some way to reverse the Enchantress's enchantment. As Black Knight had once been an Avenger, but was now being held in what more or less could be considered the headquarters for the Defenders, he would unwittingly be the linchpin for the two teams to come into conflict, as devious forces conspired against the heroes of Earth from outside. Thus, the stage was set for what would be the most titanic crossover Marvel had yet attempted. What could arguably be called the company's first true summer event story, as a 12-part story was divided across two titles for all 3 months of the summer of 1973, 10 years after the initial creation of the Avengers. So would this story have all the appropriate thrills, frills, and chills of a 10-year anniversary? Let's find out and take this away. The comic opens on jolly old England, as the Avengers get a jolly old English welcome. It seems this British S.H.I.E.L.D. agent here doesn't like the idea of the American Avengers entering his country, especially when their numbers include the ex-criminal Swordsman and his mysterious companion Mantis. The rest of the Avengers, a lineup currently consisting of Scarlet Witch, Black Panther, Iron Man, Thor, Captain America, and The Vision, all vouch for their companions. Well, all except Cap, who still doesn't trust the Swordsman, but that won't really come into play in this story. And as the Avengers suggest, their word is apparently more than good enough because the S.H.I.E.L.D. agent simply accepts that and leaves as quickly as he came. Sometimes you just really need to fill up a few additional pages. The Avengers have come to the British Isles to visit Garrett Castle, home of the Black Knight, since he's been missing since Avengers 110, 5 issues before this, when the Avengers called for his help in battling Magneto and he didn't respond. Something tells me all that metal wouldn't have made him very helpful though anyway. So finally, with some free time, they've come to check on him at his palatial home, only to find the barrier Doctor Strange put in place around the castle preventing them from doing so. Mantis, with her magical sensitivities, is able to determine the cause of the force field, so the team heads back to the States to visit the good doctor at his home and learn what's up. This leads to one of my favorite openings to a comic book ever, just this full-page shot of the Avengers simply being flung through the air. It seems the Doc doesn't want to be disturbed at the moment, so he set a similar barrier around his home to what he put in place around Garrett Castle. So no matter how much the Avengers want to just barge in unwelcomed, they just keep getting blown away like all they are is dust in the wind. They do manage to get far enough inside to see that the Black Knight appears to be inside the building, but that's all they manage to learn on their own. And of course, we already know that the Defenders do have the Black Knight, because you watched my intro and didn't skip straight to the story, obviously. But despite the Avengers' suspicions, Strange is simply trying to help the Black Knight return to normal, and he has recently returned home from a solo adventure with the belief that he might finally have made some progress on how to do just that. Strange recently discovered that the Knight's soul is out in limbo, floating in an empty void, and so Doc sends him a mystic telegram across the endless space. The message asks Dane's soul if he knows a way out of his own ensorcelment, which, of course, he doesn't. Who's the Doc here, Doc? But while Whitman sends an honest response back, this is a superhero comic, so outside forces are going to mess with that message. This crossover really got its start with Thor issue 207, where a battle between Thor and his brother Loki left the trickster god blind and falling to his death. He was rescued at the last minute by the dread Dormammu. Dormammu is the flaming-headed ruler of a place called the Dark Dimension, a mystical being of immense power who nonetheless was forced by Doctor Strange in a previous story to agree to never invade Earth. But he believes he has a way around that now, a way to bring Earth to him, using a device called the Evil Eye. The Evil Eye was a weapon of great power discovered in an early issue of Fantastic Four, but as Loki points out, it was also destroyed in that same issue. But Dormammu explains it wasn't actually destroyed, just shattered into 6 separate pieces, and now, just like a Shikon jewel, Dormammu plans to have the Defenders seek out the separate pieces and gather them back together. But Dormammu can't interfere with the mystical missive Strange sent to the Black Knight because Strange would detect his magic. So Dormammu promises to cure Loki's eyesight if the trickster god helps in his world-conquering plans. As a fervent hater of Midgard, because his brother Thor loves the planet so much, Loki agrees, changing the message to have the Black Knight claim that he's learned the Evil Eye will be able to save him. And because using a device called the Evil Eye is obviously gonna have no negative consequences, Strange immediately decides to look into this suggestion. Thanks to yet another magical eye, this one of Agamotto, Strange is able to learn of the 6 shattered pieces, and the Defenders, now including Hawkeye, who has ended up with the group after quitting the Avengers a few months earlier, split up to go after the disparate pieces. And as luck would have it, there's exactly 6 of them to make the divide. Loki immediately regrets his decision to help out though, and not just because Dormammu's a bit of an ass. He realizes that if the Eye gives Dormammu the power to pull Earth into the Dark Dimension, then nothing would stop him from conquering Asgard next. So in an effort to find a way to stop Dormammu without implicating himself in the plot, Loki appears to the Avengers and claims that the Defenders plan to gather the Evil Eye in order to conquer the universe. Already angry at Strange's lack of hospitality, the Avengers are ready to believe Loki, especially considering that the Defenders are such a new team that the Avengers are only learning just now that the group even exists at all, and that the team's lineup consists of Valkyrie, who they had last met as an actual different person and a villain, and people like Hulk and Namor, who, while heroes, have had pretty shaky allegiances at best, and the portrayal of their own former member Hawkeye. So the Avengers also decide to split up and intercept the Defenders, though they have 8 members instead of 6, so Vision and Wanda team up, as do Black Panther and Mantis, since Mantis has a premonition that she'll be needed. So the majority of the rest of the story is just the fights as the two groups cross swords. First up, we have Silver Surfer facing off against Scarlet Witch and the Vision in Rurutu, French Polynesia. And Steve Englehart seems to believe that the island both had an active volcano and a mostly isolated cargo cult-like native population, neither of which seems to be entirely true from what I can tell, but I'm admittedly no expert, and Steve didn't have Google, so, what the hell. It's fantasy. Surfer believes his part of the eye may have fallen into the local volcano, and in attempting to search for the piece, he accidentally causes the volcano to erupt. This happens just as Vision and Scarlet Witch are passing by above, and it destroys their plane and nearly sends Wanda to her doom. By this point, the romance between the pair that we saw only hinted at in the Kree-Skrull War has developed into an actual relationship. And so even though Vision manages to save Wanda, he's so enraged that she was hurt that his logic is overwritten and he simply attack Surfer with wild abandon. Their fight causes the volcano to erupt further, and the native population, in an effort to save themselves, offer Wanda as a sacrifice to their new shiny silver god. This causes Vision to abandon the fight so he can save his lady love, and Silver Surfer flies off with his piece of the eye, but they both immediately report to their team that the other side is dangerous. Vision claiming that Loki was right, and Strange, learning of Loki's involvement, believes that the Avengers are being controlled by the trickster god. We check next on Iron Man in Monterrey, Mexico, who finds a piece of the evil eye at a local university, but the piece is immediately stolen from him by Hawkeye, and the two fight on the campus until Hawkeye is able to use a magnetic arrow to cause Iron Man's repulsor beams to damage a tower. Iron Man runs off to protect the civilians from the damage he caused, while Hawkeye just runs. So we move on to Mantis and Black Panther in Fort Wayne, Indiana, who detect the presence of Doctor Strange, but as they search for him, all they can seem to find is an old couple waiting for the bus. But Mantis, not fooled, straight up kicks the old lady and knocks her under the bus. I absolutely love that moment. I'm guessing we have the Comics Code Authority to thank for not getting the full greatness of Mantis freaking karate kicking an old woman in the face, but thankfully, we do have Hot Fuzz. Mantis is awesome. As Mantis insists, the old woman is actually Doctor Strange, attempting to hide with an illusion spell, not wanting to fight. He continues to try to flee, but as the Avengers keep trying to stop him, he's forced to finally fight back, easily knocking out the pair with a magic bolt and finally getting away. At this point, Dormammu finally catches on to the war going on between the two teams, which I mostly mention because I just love this full-page art from Avengers artist Bob Brown. Seriously, such a shame this artist died so early. Underrated artwork here. Our next conflict takes us to a castle in Bolivia, built by a Nazi that had fled here in an effort to escape the consequences of World War II. The Swordsman and Valkyrie both meet up here searching for the next piece of the eye, so we can get a swashbuckling sword fight in an old castle like an Errol Flynn movie. That's a reference for all you youngins out there. The best part of which is when Valkyrie makes fun of Swordsman's stupid mustache. The current owner of the castle, who actually found the eye and thinks it's a part of a bunch of expensive treasures that he also found in the castle, attempts to shoot both combatants dead so he can keep the fortune for himself, thinking they're there to steal all of it from him. But after shooting and severely wounding Swordsman, the Avenger avenges himself on the owner, killing the gunman as he falls down. Valkyrie makes sure Swordsman survives long enough for the police to arrive, and then vanishes with her piece of the eye. That's Defenders 4, Avengers 0 for those of you keeping track. Our next fight is the big one, as Captain America faces off against Namor in Osaka, Japan. The two do make reference to both having fought in World War II, but I'm surprised no specific reference is made to their time working together in The Invaders. The people of Japan aren't happy to have these outsiders apparently invading their lands, and so the fight ends up being interrupted by Japan's biggest superhero, Sunfire. Sunny doesn't know what the evil eye is, but he knows that it's in Japan and that if these guys want it, he doesn't want them to have it, so he takes it and runs, forcing Namor and Cap to work together to get the eye back, which finally gives them a chance to talk, and Namor explains that all they're really trying to do is save the Black Knight, a member of the Avengers himself, so Cap should actually be able to understand, right? Realizing they may have both been deceived, Cap joins Namor and they gather up the Avengers to meet up at Strange's sanctum. At first, the Defenders think Namor betrayed them, but everyone finally takes a moment to stop and listen, and they quickly realize that they're all the victims of lies and deceit from both Loki and Dormammu. They also realize that they were in such a rush to get together that they forgot to pick up the final two members, Thor and Hulk. Hulk went to LA where he easily found his piece of the eye, but he was interrupted in his efforts by Thor. And you probably don't need me to tell you that a showdown between these two giants is a fan favorite matchup. As two of the mightiest characters in the Marvel Universe, even I get excited for their throwdowns. And while the pair have clashed before, not only in Journey into Mystery 112 as mentioned here, but also at least in Submariner 35, and though they would continue to have some great battles over the years after this confrontation is not particularly notable. The two fight to a standstill here, literally, as, after exchanging just a few hits, they grab each other's wrists to prevent any further attacks and just hold there until both of their teams show up to stop them. With all 6 pieces of the eye gathered, Doctor Strange lays them out to see how to connect them and wonders if he even still should. But before he can make any decision, a servant of Dormammu that's just a creepy disembodied mask floats down and snatches all the pieces of the eye away. Within moments, Dormammu makes use of the eye's power, and we see the landscape of the city and the people in it begin to change, as buildings twist and humans become monsters, all depicted by some more great Bob Brown art. The 2 teams are unable to do anything as the recently human monsters attack them, but S.H.I.E.L.D. shows up to fight back the crowds, giving Doctor Strange enough breathing room to send Avengers and Defenders both into the Dark Dimension. Dormammu gave a 60-minute time limit to his full conquering of the Earth, but our heroes are forced to walk a slow path through the Dark Dimension in order to reach Dormammu and Loki safely to really get that time crunch countdown feeling going. To further slow things down, they're attacked by some mindless ones, powerful servants of Dormammu from the Dark Dimension. Meanwhile, back on Earth, we get this great cameo collage that I absolutely love. It's like a roll call of major Marvel characters from the time, featuring the Fantastic Four, Spider-Man, the Inhumans, Luke Cage, Khazar, Ghost Rider, and even freaking Man-Thing makes an appearance. We also get Doctor Doom and Dracula, and perhaps most notably, Adam Warlock and Thanos show up, almost a full year before Thanos' story actually crosses over with the Avengers, as I've covered in a very old video that's probably very hard to watch. Sorry about that. Whatever, moving on. The teams finally reach Dormammu, but with the evil eye in hand, he has no trouble defeating both groups. The Defenders he immediately knocks out with a single bolt, and the Avengers, despite their super cool team cry, don't fare much better. Dormammu turns the ground into quicksand, catching most of them, even Vision, before they get anywhere. He then channels his inner Jafar as he sings his Prince Ali reprise and turns Thor and Iron Man back into their civilian identities. Identities that were still a secret to their fellow Avengers up to this point. That leaves only the Scarlet Witch, who in both the Kree-Skrull War and this story up to this point was mostly there just to be helpless and react to events going on around her. She finally redeems herself here, casting a single hex bolt at Dormammu, even while old Flamehead attempts to turn her into glue. And the bolt knocks the evil eye from his hand. The eye then suddenly sucks Dormammu up inside of it and spits all of its power back out at Loki. This has the effect of finally restoring Loki's eyesight, but also driving the villain completely mad, which seems to be a weirdly common way of stopping the bad guys in these old comics. The Watcher, who had shown up to witness these momentous events, explains to the 2 teams that Dormammu is a being of pure energy that is always burning. So I guess basically he's like a living star. That's pretty cool, actually. Wanda's hex caused the evil eye to absorb all of Dormammu's energy, but since energy can't be created or destroyed, old Flamehead will eventually come back someday. So with the evil eye in hand, Strange takes the 2 teams home and they go their separate ways. Though Strange does use the eye to help everyone forget Iron Man and Thor's secret identities, at least until the day they freely choose to reveal those identities. Which is surprisingly reaffirming. Doctor Strange, such an ally. Who knew? He also makes everyone on Earth, except for the Avengers, forget that the Defenders are a team at all. Which is fine, really, because they barely are anyway. With Hulk, Namor, Hawkeye, and Surfer all preferring to work solo, and/or claiming to only begrudgingly help this time during each adventure. So the Defenders return to their original goal of freeing Black Knight from his statue, and ironically, Strange believes the evil eye may actually give him the power to do that after all. But instead, this unexpectedly sends them back in time to the 12th century, where they are surprised to find the Black Knight, currently involved in one of the Crusades. This leads to a rather uncomfortable story of the Defenders attempting to help the Black Knight free King Richard from an Islamic prison as they're besieged by various Muslim groups, though they refer to them primarily as Arabs and Mohammedans. I mean, you guys are literally the invaders here in the land of people who did nothing but not follow your religion, but like, okay, whatever. That doesn't stop the Muslims from being depicted as evil, literally summoning monsters to help them fight in the Crusades. Black Knight is here because of the ties of his family's history to the legend of King Arthur. And Arthur's murderer, Modred, who also killed the original Black Knight, is apparently so evil that his essence lived on after death, and he would occasionally take human form again to plague mankind, like the Castlevania Dracula, not the Marvel Dracula. Those are two different things. Thanks to a spell cast by Merlin, the Black Knight is destined to fight Modred whenever he reappears, and since he has appeared here, seeking to help Prince John overthrow King Richard the Lionheart, and since the Black Knight's soul was just floating around in limbo doing nothing, the knight was pulled through time to this place and apparently given back his body, I guess. Prester John, the original guardian of the Evil Eye, shows up here as well and takes back the eye, using it to quickly defeat Modred. The Black Knight, feeling like he's in his element, decides to remain in the past while the defenders return home, no longer worried about having to restore him. The comic ends with Hawkeye quitting the group so he can continue trying to work on his own. Namor, Surfer, and Hulk also all quit the group, but they do that at the end of pretty much every Defenders adventure. Hulk will literally be back in the very next issue to fight with the weird space monster Zimnu, but that's then, and this time is for the breakdown. There's definitely a lot I don't like about this story, even putting aside some of the more uncomfortable depictions of people of color. A solid majority of the story is just clashes between two superheroes, and I've never personally understood people's desire to see two superheroes fight so much. I don't really care who would win in a fight between two good guys. You're just wasting time, you idiots. But this story is still remarkable for the epic level of its clashes, and how much thought and care was clearly put into just who would face off against who. Surfer and Vision, Valkyrie and Swordsman, Hawkeye and Iron Man, Captain America and Namor, and Thor vs. Hulk are all clearly well-planned fan service battles that I'm sure many readers can get behind. I guess I can say that I am a bit surprised that the Avengers lost each of the fights, but the story also kinda wouldn't have worked otherwise. So perhaps the most worthwhile criticism is the conclusion of the story. After 7 issues of build-up, the showdown with Dormammu and Loki is like 2 pages. Wanda one-shot that dude like his name was Guy Gardner. And then the actual conclusion is a less than exciting battle in the Middle Ages that essentially makes the entire adventure pointless when it turns out Black Knight was fine all along. Unlike the Kree-Skrull War, this conflict doesn't leave much of a lasting impression on the Marvel Universe. Essentially, the story ends where it began, and little to nothing is actually gained from the experience. But even considering that, I'm still giving this a series recommendation level of high. What this comic does well, which mostly is art, epic level fights, and the uniqueness of such a crossover at the time period, still makes this a fun and interesting read for anyone into Marvel history. The collected edition gets 1. Piece of an Evil Eye, which slides mostly into the bad territory. It does collect the full story here, which spreads across 8 issues, so that's good, but there's absolutely no special features whatsoever. Pretty much the entire story, or as close as matters, is also collected in both the first Defenders Epic Collection, Day of the Defenders, and the Avengers Epic Collection for the Avengers Defenders War. And those also come with a ton of other collected issues of things and even bonus materials. So I highly recommend getting one of those instead. I mean, I recommend Marvel's Epic Collections in general. Those are pretty S-tier collections, even if they're paperback. Thanks everybody for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this video. We're moving right along through my coverage of major Marvel event stories. Next is Contest of Champions, and then one of my all-time favorites after that. So if you did enjoy this video, or you're just curious about what's next, or you're just rocking out to a tune called Evil Eye, like you should be, then be sure to hit that like and subscribe and everything so you can be sure to be here next time, and I hope to see you then, right here in the Comic Cave.